Hey guys, how's it going? It is Kire here with an updated version of the Barbarian No Shout Weapon Master Double Swing build. On the previous video, I appreciate all the support on that one, so thank you guys for watching that. I'm glad you guys are enjoying the build. I think we've improved it. I think we've made it better. There was some flaws with the build going forward that I think I've addressed here. What I figured I'll do is I'll just show you guys the full video breakdown of multiple runs all being shown simultaneously as we're going through on the video here. So as I'm breaking it down, you can see that in the background. You kind of see how the build is played as we're going through in this build. So the issues that I wanted to address, for one, I wanted to make the build faster, be able to go through Nightmare Dungeons and clear those quicker. If you've played any of the Nightmare Dungeons, you'll notice there's a ton of being able to have to grab one thing and bring it to another location. So just moving fast is very important. And then Fortified Generation, I've solved that. And then finally, just making the build feel better, tidying up all the specific little choices. I think we've refined it quite a bit. That is going to be this video here. Timestamps will be linked down below. And if you're watching this video, there's going to be an updated build planner and there will be a new build planner for this particular build because there's a ton of uniques in this one that you might not necessarily have. Old one will still be relevant, but this new one will be for the new build with all the uniques if you have them. And with all that, guys, let's get into the video. Itemization, this is getting close to the ideal version of this, but in the link planner, you'll see the actual full itemization. I figured I'll at least show you guys what I have now and we can talk about it. On here, on the headpiece, all stat, death blow, cooldown reduction, crowd control duration. I like a lot of these. I do like the cooldown reduction, especially for ground stomp, but armor percentage and flat health are probably gonna be pretty good instead of those two. If you want to replace that, you could even argue that the crowd control duration is not worth it. It really depends on what you roll, but I think all of those, like those 6, in my opinion, would actually be pretty good. The all stat is probably the first one to go, in my opinion. On the chest piece, you want as much damage reduction as possible. I do like the 4 ranks to ground stomp. I think that's pretty solid, especially with all the nerfs to the DRs that happened. Being able to throw in a ground stomp in there is kind of nice. And it's basically like a DR anyway, because it's reducing the cooldown of ground stomp by quite a bit. Max life, cooldown reduction close. We have all the options. We can go cooldown reduction, fortified, and bleeding. We have that ability in this build. Every DR is accessible to us, so you might as well go for it. S tier version of this would be like damage reduction, bleeding, damage reduction, fortified, damage reduction, close, and then armor percentage, max life, or ranks to ground stomp would be like ideal for the chest piece. On the gloves here, this is almost perfect. I really think attack speed is one of the best feeling parts of the kit when it comes to itemization. So attack speed is going to be goated. Ranks to double swing, obviously really good. Lucky hit chance is okay. Ideally, either on the crit strike chance against injured enemies, or the lucky hit chance would change to just raw crit rate. That would be ideal. That would be the best in slot in my opinion. Then we have on the legs, this is trying to mirror the chest piece. The only difference would be potentially going damage reduction injured. You can't get that on the chest, but you can't get it on the legs. Then on the boots, we're stuck with Penitent Greaves. This is going to be the go-to here. If you don't have Penitent Greaves or you don't care about it, you don't want to use that version of it, I would probably go damage reduction, injured, movement speed, fortified generation, and berserk duration would be the ones I'm looking for. On every single weapon here, all 4 of them, well, all 3 of them except this one, we're looking for all stat strength, crit damage, and vulnerable damage. That'd be ideal. This is probably my worst one so far. This is just an 815 I pulled at level 61. I've been keeping it ever since, but ideally we'll get something better. With vulnerable, all stat, damage close, damage core, that would be ideal. And then same here, we ended up getting the good roll here on the 2-handed weapon as well. Then for the necklace, I've been liking this a lot. Ranks to No Mercy has been fantastic. That's another 9% crit rate against stunned, slowed enemies. Cooldown reduction, obviously really good. Fortify cost reduction, really good. Damage reduction to injured, okay. There's other options. You could get like Wallop. You can get heavy-handed. There's a lot of potential options here. Damage reduction close, damage reduction fortified. All of those things, in my opinion, would be really good. This is by far the hardest one to get right, but those are the things I'm looking for when it comes to the neck piece. Also, ranks to Weapon Master would be good. One thing I forgot to mention, damage when weapons are swapped would also be good here too, because you can get like 45% additive damage on the chest piece and on the neck. That would be a potential option. On the ring here, I'm thinking like crit strike, crit damage, vulnerable damage. Don't really need the resource generation. Damage close, lucky hit chances is totally fine. These are the things I'm looking for when it comes to these 2 rings in this build. But itemization's pretty straightforward. when it comes to this build. Not much has changed. This is just me actually finally now having the better gear compared to the last video. Now let's talk about the aspects. These are going to be massive changes, but I think this is way cleaner than I had it prior in the previous build. I think this is going to be the natural progression as you level up. On the headpiece now, we're doing Weapon Master. Your Weapon Master skills have an additional charge. Same thing here, Iron Skin. I think this is absolutely necessary. You need this 100%. We have Audacity on the gloves. I think it's been amazing. I think this is really good and totally worth keeping. Having that extra stun just randomly, you pull people in, they stun. 20-second cooldown is actually really not that bad, especially paired with your ground stomp. You're just switching back and forth between them. I was theorizing it on the last video, but now that I have it, I absolutely love it. I think it's totally worth having. We have Disobedience on the pants now. Last time I was doing it in all the testing, I only had a min roll on here, but we'll talk about why we switched it, because this is the big change. Talked about this earlier in the video, but Penitent Greaves, having the movement speed built in, but then also the chill, you deal 9% multiplicative increased damage to chilled enemies, which is a nice bonus. But then we're going to pair that with this aspect where you move faster away from them. This is going to make the build feel so much better to be able to constantly avoid enemies and get to the target where you want to go and then pull them in, and then you still kill them. If you want to go slower and kill everyone, you totally can. But this is, if you just want to speed run Nightmare Dungeons, it's totally possible. And then we got Weapon Master on the two-hander. This has been amazing. I like this. It's more for the itemization portion of this, not necessarily the aspect portion. The freeze is nice. Don't get me wrong, the freeze is nice, but the attack speed is what we want here. I like this a lot. Could go this option as well, or you could just go a one-handed sword and then get the aspect where when you stand still, you get increased damage based on how many seconds you stand still. I think all three of those options are going to be really good. I still like the attack speed, but with this build, I have so much more base attack speed now. It might not necessarily be worth it, but you do notice it when you start to pump off. You really pop off with this. And then for the two-hander here, I was worried with this, dropping all of the ways of generating Fury, I wouldn't be able to proc this, but after seeing it, I still proc this a ton, even dropping all of those Fury generators. I think this is totally worth it. It's really skyrocketed the damage quite a bit. On the rings, we have the ground stomp. Ideally, this would be a better roll, and this is going to get buffed in the next patch to 25%. Can only get better from here. So very good. And then we also have Edge Masters on the ring here. So both of these are good. We don't need any Fury generators or resource generators. That's one of the nice things about this build. It takes very few Fury generators to actually work, which is a rarity. A lot of these builds, basically half the damn build is all about resource generation to make sure that Unrelenting Fury works. This is the final one about being able to move faster away from slowed. This is going to help a ton in actually getting these dungeons done in a reasonable amount of time. Here's the skill tree. These are the changes that I made, and I'll give a reason why I made these particular changes. First of all, I tested all of the potential ways of getting Fortify. I think it's a complete waste to use it on an aspect when you can just get it here, and it's really good. Put it on your auto attack. This is a two-handed mace weapon. Part of the walking arsenal, you're going to be wanting to use this. It's not just a generator that you kind of forced to use. You need to use it because of walking arsenal anyway. Is that with lunging strike, I was just kind of jumping in, you know, just by the nature of the move, you dash in a lot. Whereas with this, you need to really rely on your steel grasp to pull them into you. And when they're stunned, to make sure you're hitting them to get your Fortify. What I like to do in the beginning of the match is I just pull someone in and then hit them like 2 or 3 times. Now, boom, I'm fully fortified. And then you can just maintain it as you go through the encounter. But in that beginning, you can pull them in, stun them, get fully fortified, and you're good. And that's why that's good, is because you get that DR of fortified. And if you want to, you could take stuff like this here where you could get the extra damage of counter offensive. That's something that requires fortified, but it's a really good damage modifier. And the glyph in the Paragon board here can be good. Undaunted, getting that extra 10% damage reduction the more fortify you have. Those are the reasons why fortify is so important. And you just get a base 10% DR when you are fortified. So that's another reason why I like it a ton. I'm trying to get as many DRs as possible with this build because survivability potentially is an issue. It's an issue with every build, but I think it's a really important thing to focus on. And then as we go through here, the only thing you take here is going to just be double swing. We obviously have it on our gloves, so that's why we're at 9. And then the 2 important things are going to be stunned and knock down enemies. You gain the Fury. That's the whole point of double swing. Plus, being able to guarantee vulnerable is great. And then if you guys watch the campfire, the damage is going up. So even better. Next is going to be this board here. What I wanted to do is double down on ground stomp. We took this, if you saw the aspect section, We are taking the Earthquake and we are preparing for that Earthquake to be buffed in the next patch. They've already said it's going to be 25%. I'm going to try it on the two-hander to make it 50% damage increase. It's going to be massive. Having points into it is nice. If I could, I would do more because it actually lowers the cooldown. You got the Fury Generator, the increase on the Enhanced Ground Stomp. A lot of the kit is based on this. This is going to add stagger to the boss. Just having this on the lowest cooldown possible is great. And then we're going to come up here for extra survivability and the 15% additional maximum life, the 9% damage reduction to elites. It's really important. As you're going to notice, we're hitting every DR we can. DR is really good in this game. We're going to try to get as much of it as possible. Then we're going to go Iron Skin. And down to the heal, I tried this Fortify. It's a complete joke. You don't get anything. This is complete trash. Don't ever take that. Even with I had 70% Fortify generation, and it barely even moved the needle. It's absurd on how bad that point is. This is really good. The heal is awesome. 9% DR while berserking. We're going to be 100% berserking. I dropped this portion and I dropped this portion. You don't need the Fury generation. It's just completely worthless. And I'm taking Limitless Rage. Overcapping on the Fury is actually important. I'm still able to get by. Don't need any of that. Just complete waste of a point. The movement speed here just makes us go faster. Close damage, distant damage reduction. Finding No Mercy on the neck piece is awesome. Having 18% increased critical strike chance against stunned, slowed, immobilized. Helps a ton. Obviously, we're going to have Steel Grasp. We're going to go down to the Berserking portion. One thing I changed, instead of getting the 20 Fury, we're going to be getting the Berserking. We actually don't need the 20 Fury. I tried it. It feels fine. I love the attack speed here. The one-handers, it makes a big difference with Double Swing. With the Mace, you want to go Wallop and you want to go Concussion to get the extra stuns. Makes a big difference. You really notice it. You need to have that one-handed Mace to do that. Gain Fury while swapping weapons. That's basically the build now, updated, but this feels a lot cleaner. Okay, so for the expertise section, I've been going with the two-handed sword expertise because I want the damage reduction when bleeding. I want to have that capability. That is the reason why I'm going this direction. If you don't have a problem with survivability, you could just go here with the two-handed axe expertise to get the increased damage to vulnerable. One thing on the itemization portion, we have an axe in our hand. I like having an axe on this, and this is going to be the thing that we're using with Deathblow to get that 10% increased crit strike chance. I've been liking this a lot. Being able to have those extra DRs on your chest and on your legs is going to help a ton. And then there's other glyphs down the line that could potentially use that as well to help survive. So the Paragon node is by far the hardest thing to give good advice on. Every time I've tried to start this section of the video, I find myself ranting for like 12 minutes and I get off topic. And I think it's good advice, but for the context of this video, I don't think it's going to really vibe well. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put that rant in an unlisted video, link it here. You guys can watch it if you guys want to see the full breakdown, but I just want to concisely talk about the Paragon board and my decisions, and then the actual other advice. If you really care for it, you can check it out there. Now, that'll be how I can do it. I'll feel good. I'm getting all the context. You have all of the stuff available for you guys. So now let's actually talk about it. So here's the decision making I made. I think in the first node here, I really like strength here, like a strength node. So I went ambidextrous on the first node. And also you get the extra physical damage. You get the extra armor here. Whenever I see a lot of good magic nodes, I think a strength node, ambidextrous, martial, and might. All of those increase magic nodes. So if you see the good magic nodes and you see a ton of strength here, notice how when you search it, a lot of strength pops up. And then also keep in mind too that there's strength here on the rare nodes that are going to increase it as well. So that is why strength is such a good thing to activate early here. If you're running a shout build, this is where I would put your martial. I ended up going with Flawless Technique. I like this one a lot. You get the crit damage here. You get the armor here. It's a good kind of double dipping of good damage and good survivability. It branches off well. You can come up here for the one-handed damage. You also get attack speed. And then I ended up going Mortal Draw here. We get a ton of other stuff too. We get more critical strike damage, damage reduction from close enemies in multiple nodes here. So this is a good board. It has a lot of survivability on the right side and a lot of damage on the left. I came up to here. I really like this board in Weapon Master. And then another reason why I like it a ton is because I'm going to be going Weapon Master, and this pairs really well with Weapon Master. First of all, this is like a corner board, as you'll start to see. And then in the other video, I'll break this down more. But there's some boards that have these quick kind of corner cuts. And then there's some of these that are more of those T-shapes like Decimator and Flawless Technique. I like to pair one of these T-shaped ones with a corner cut, so then we can get on to the next one and start to target some of the good nodes. You get the damage to elites. Then we also cut through here. This synergizes really well because we have the Weapon Master increasing their physical damage and the damage reduction modifiers by At level 15, 41.8% bonus to that. You'll see that the physical damage is increased, even on the rare node, and then also the armor is increased. That's a fat amount of armor, 283 at 15. It's probably going to go to 3 something later on as I level it up. So this is a big increase in survivability from the armor side and the physical damage side, mainly more for the survivability. But we get good damage to elites and we get good survivability here. So this is a good place to put the Weapon Master node. After seeing this, it makes me like this node a lot more than at least I had previously. Like I thought this was all going to be about the additional bonus for the cooldown reduction, because the cooldown reduction is really good. You also gain just good stats from it too. A good node so far. And this is me at 78. I came up here, hit a lot of rare nodes. This is where I'm going to have it linked. You're going to see it all in the description on where I'm going to go or where I'm planning on going. Based on how things change, these are the top priorities, is hitting these, because not only do you hit rare glyph, but then you get a lot of rare nodes with it. Probably, if I do the math, I'll be able to take all of these off and then go up here for another corner cut up here and activate that. But as I get more and more points, it's going to change. It's always going to be in flux. But I'll try to give you one that's going to be where I'm going to be at like level 90. I think that's going to be a good spot for me to end it for this build, so you can kind of get it in real time. Nothing is worse than like copying a Paragon board and then you realize that's a level 100, but the choices you make in between are massively different. This is the board I have now. This is where it will be as I'm going to be leveling up, so you can see it in real time and you can actually copy this in real time and it will be useful for you instead of just copying it knowing that it will get better later. If we're going to be scaling up, this is the most important thing we have in feeling strong as we level up, especially later on. When itemization gets a little stale, we're basically finishing out our builds at this point. This is the best tool we have, so min-maxing this each level is going to be really important. Okay, Malignant Hearts, let's talk about them. 2 of them I'm very sure of that I think are the best in slot. 1 of them is up for grabs. There's some debate potentially to be had there. So the blue one I like a ton. It's just up to 20% DR. That's awesome. The damage is really not that great in my opinion. I'm never noticing it. 20% DR is very noticeable and worth getting. The next one, this is just too good. It synergizes very well with the kit because double swing also procs on knockdowns, and we absolutely love attack speed. So this is just a very good Devious Heart that works perfectly with this build. So I think these are the 2 no-brainers. I have this one in. This is not something for the build. I'm just going to be testing this one. And also I wanted to see it too. I was curious because I have the bleeding expertise and I'm doing a ton of stuns. So I was wondering if I can convert the bleed into a ton of damage. That was just an idea that I had there. So that leaves us with 3 options when it comes to the final one. I think overall the best one is going to be Caged Heart of the Malignant Pact, where it's the rotating, you get the attack speed, you get the core and basic skills that have a chance to fully restore primary resource, and then you get the shield. I think this is just simply the best one. Barber is an option. I've tried Barber. So many things in this kit proc off of needing the move itself to be the kill. So for example, Deathblow doesn't actually proc off of killing something with it, putting the damage in and then is blowing up later. So it doesn't actually count it. It was actually kind of counterintuitive where when it didn't crit, it was killing. And because it's like when something crits and all damage after, when it doesn't crit and it killed it in that non-crit, it was actually counting towards Deathblow, which just didn't feel good. And there's a lot of times where it just felt clunky and you would put the damage in, have to wait. I didn't like it. In other builds, it's good, but for this particular build, I was not a fan of it. Another one that I thought would be really good is going to be Caged Heart of Tempting Fate, where you gain additive critical strike damage up to 80%. Non-critical strikes deal multiplicative less damage. I felt like my death blows in this build were going to 0. And if I didn't crit, it was very all or nothing. Like I'd have these monster crits with death blow, but then I would also have these really lackluster ones. When I didn't have this heart, I was finding myself, if I got them low and then I didn't crit, I would still kill them, kill an enemy, and then keep that reset going. Whereas with this build, if I crit, I would do a ton of damage, but if I didn't crit, I wouldn't kill them and I wouldn't get that cooldown reduction from killing something. So there were so many situations where that was happening and I wasn't keeping the build rolling, especially on like elites, the enemies around elites and stuff like that. You know, on bosses, it was whatever. It doesn't really matter too much because when I was facing the boss, that I'm not going to get the cooldown. But on other parts of it, I totally wanted that cooldown. So that is why I stopped using that heart. It just didn't feel that good. Last heart, definitely going to be this one in my opinion. Those other two are strong contenders.